But to keep it going, one of my best friends in the industry is here. It's Mr. Paul Sporer. How you doing?
Nick, good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening. It's better because I get to see you. And I love this shirt. The Charlotte's
Thank you.
fantastic.
I had to rep Shar.
Of course.
Big news, big news. Functionality in her back legs coming back today.
Yes.
Right off
Yes.
rip on the very first treatment. So very, very happy about that. She's still going to be there for a few days, but huge news.
Oh, I'm
So
so happy to hear that,
very
man.
happy
If
about
you guys
that.
didn't know, I mean, Sporer was felt terrible. Send me some text, me like, "Hey, I'm really sorry. Charlotte isn't doing well." We're so relieved to hear she's doing better. So
Thank you for
great to have.
accommodating me yesterday.
Oh,
If
of
it's any
course.
consolation, if anyone was mad, just know that I was being peed and pooped upon by said dog when I was supposed to be here doing my presentation yesterday. So
He's not
thank you
joking.
to Scott for originally switching with me, which I thought would be enough time, and then for Nick and crew filling in that hour there. That
Oh
was
yeah.
huge. But yeah, news finally moving up because we had the winter storm
There
and
we go.
Charlotte, kind of
Yep.
a 1-2 combo of terribleness. We got it turned around.
Yep. I mean, yeah. Huge shout out to the crew. I just pretty much just said, "Hey guys, come on in," and all of a sudden we had 7 of us talking. It was a lot of fun, and I'm glad we get to do both because I enjoyed that, and we get your presentation. I don't even know what it is. I just know Sporer is doing a presentation. I'm going to change the banner so you guys can see it. That's all I know. Don't tell me. Don't ruin the surprise.
Okay. You'll see there's a
But
title right away, so you'll get an idea off rip.
okay. But guys, go to the link below. go.rallyup.com/pitchcon. Help support. We're raising money for Feeding America. Also, after this, we have the blind co-manager draft. This is not an 11-hour stream day. It is a 12-hour stream day.
Huge.
We added the extra hour. You're getting bonus content today. And without further ado, Paul Sporer.
Nick, thank you very much. Is my extra screen showing? It is. There it is. All right. So what we're going to talk about today is 4 underused pitches that could fuel 2021 breakouts if used more often. Now, let me be clear. Disclaimer right off rip. Just throwing the pitch more often does not inherently make you better. We know that, but I just want to be clear that if you just go out there and throw a bunch of extra changeups or extra sliders, it will not automatically foster a breakout. When you see some of these players, you'll understand that they have more to do in addition to throwing these pitches more. But basically what I did was I took the 2019-2020 seasons together and I looked for some lightly used pitches, which for me, I was aiming for 10% or lower. I snuck in an 11% in there. But basically what that means is if you're not throwing a pitch 10% of the time, you don't really have it in your arsenal. Like that is kind of the threshold to say that that's a pitch that you have. Otherwise, batters don't have to worry about it. It's not something that you have. So I was looking for pitches at that threshold on the pitch info. On pitch graphics, there's pitch FX and there's pitch info. I was going by pitch info. Honestly, I only do that because Nick goes by that on our P-Val draft. I'm not exactly sure what the differentiation is between the two, why he prefers that, but I went with that because I'm on Pitcher List right now, so I'm going to go with pitch info. And what I did was then look at the ones that had positive pitch values via pitch info, and I wanted to see if maybe these pitches could foster a breakout for some guys. So let's just dive into it right away here with our first guy. And it's Mr. Dylan Cease, somebody who's drawing a lot of attention right now for one specific reason, a tweet that went out earlier. But he's been a breakout guy for the last couple of years, but it's not quite coming together. I think his changeup could be instrumental in a potential breakout. He uses it 11% of the time. There's that 11% sneak in there and has a 3.5 P-Val. Now, P-Val is cumulative, so it's just adding the last 2 years there. And, that's a pretty decent number there. Again, just throwing it 22% of the time will not necessarily yield a 7 P-Val. That's not how it works. There will be more that has to go into a Dylan Cease breakout. He's a career 895 OPS against lefties. That's 133 points higher than his OPS against righties. He has a major platoon split. What do you want for a platoon split? If you're a right-hander, you want to get the changeup going. He's got that big upper 90s heater, but he can't command it. In fact, he can't command much, if we're being honest. He has a 1.9 career homer per 9 and a 12% walk rate. So he's kind of all over the map here. You're going to see this pitch. It's going to loop the entire time I'm talking about him. I didn't really have the technology or the know-how to put a bunch of pitches together, string them together, and have more than one going there. So you're just going to watch Jason Hayward continually get embarrassed by that changeup. But that's a pretty looking changeup there. If you can throw that one consistently, the breakout's coming. But he does have a 23% strikeout rate and 7% walk rate on this pitch. Both of those are above average. However, the changeup did not help with the home run suppression because he doesn't have the consistent feel for it. Because when he gave up the homers, they were middle and up. They were fat pitches that anybody could hit. Well, maybe not anybody. I probably couldn't hit them, but a lot of people could. And let me be clear. There's more to do than just throwing changeups, as I've reiterated with him. But continuing to move away from a minus 17 pitch value heater would be smart, and funneling that into changeups. And I think there's a chance that if the changeup progressed well enough for Dylan Cease, he could start to throw some righty-righty changeups. But let's work on getting that lefty 895 OPS down before we worry too much about throwing them to righties. And he kind of started to do that in 20. As far as getting away from the fastball, he dropped 4 points off it to a 48% rate. I'd like to see a bigger chunk of that taken out, maybe get down near 40%. I love that he throws fast, upper 90s heater, but it's not that great of a fastball if you can't command it that well. Velo alone does not generate success. It opens your margin for error, but does not generate success. So I'd like to see that taken out of the fastball and funneled into this changeup as well as his slider. As I mentioned earlier, the changeup is a feel pitch. So I wonder if maybe he needs a new grip to feel comfortable with it, or it's just something that he can kind of tweak. You got guys that are there, a couple guys that are a little bit more veteran in Lance Lynn and Dallas Keuchel, and somebody who's kind of not quite a veteran, but, has turned himself around in Lucas Giolito. Maybe they can get tips from him. We say that a lot. We don't necessarily know all the guys who are out there helping other guys, but I do think that those three specifically, based on what I know of them and things that we've read about them, are guys who are open to helping others, talking with others, and maybe getting in the ear of a young pitcher like Dylan Cease. Now for that thing I mentioned earlier about why his stock is kind of rising in the fantasy landscape right now. There was a tweet recently by Chuck Garfien. I'm not exactly sure who I believe he works for NBC there based on the logo. It says, Yasmani Grandal saw Dylan Cease's cleaned up mechanics a couple weeks ago. He told Ethan Katz how good he looked. He said, this guy can be a Cy Young finalist and he has the tools to do it. So everyone's bugging out on that. He was already kind of a pet player for folks. And then you see something like that from a premium catcher like that, and it's just going to shoot everything sky high. Plus, the White Sox are kind of a, on the rise team. Everyone's interested in them. So his ADP right now is at 350 in the NFBC. That's National Fantasy Baseball Championship. Very affordable. I think even with a hype machine, he's probably not going to become cost prohibitive unless he goes out and has like a devastating spring that just sends him into like the mid to early 200s. But I think maybe like a 50-point gain. I think his draft position, even in March when peak draft season hits, will still be somewhere in the 300s, making Dylan Cease affordable. I know some of you have been burned. I've been burned multiple times, but I'm sticking with him. I'm going back to the well. Dylan Cease needs to develop that changeup, and he can have a breakout. Next up, we're staying in the same division here with somebody that I'm a huge fan of and kind of started his breakout last year, and that's Aaron Sivali. Let's go ahead and get his pitch going here. Again, you're going to watch the same pitch over and over. I believe this is, a little ground out there. Aaron Sivali is throwing his changeup 8% of the time over the last 2 years for a 1.4 p-val. And he's got a lot of the tools already. Now, we know Cleveland, what they've been able to do with pitchers has been incredible. For me, there was kind of the Plesac versus Sivali, these two young guys who's on the come up. I was a big Sivali guy going into last year, and he started off brilliantly, and then he kind of tailed off toward the end of the year. Believe it or not, this start, actually, I don't know if it's this start. I should have checked that. But there was a start at the end of the year that fell apart against Pittsburgh. I don't know if it was this one because this one's already in the third inning. But of all teams to ruin his ERA at the very end of the year, it was Pittsburgh. But he's definitely got the tools. Now, he threw his changeup 7% of the time in 2019 with a 679 OPS, but a 0% strikeout or walk rate. Now, it was just 8 plate appearances, so I don't want to go too heavy on it no matter what. Kind of weird, though, that, he was getting some numbers on it, but no strikeouts. He boosted it slightly up to 9% in 20. He had a 389 OPS, but still just a 6% strikeout rate, 0% walk rate in 18 plate appearances. So all in all, we're talking about 26 plate appearances off the changeup. That's not a lot to go off of. But he is seventh in changeup OPS since 2019 with a 474 mark, minimum 150 changeups thrown. But the 4% strikeout rate is 141st out of the 145 pitchers to throw 150. I know that's a lot of numbers there at once. Basically, great OPS, god-awful strikeout rate. It's because a 160 BABIP is doing a ton of the work there. Of course, if you're throwing pitches like that are getting rollovers, then that BABIP is a lot more earned That said, I'm a little uncomfortable with it until he can find a way to get some more swings and misses on it. I still think there needs to be some refinement with this changeup if Sivali really wants to take off and become the next big thing in Cleveland. But I really do believe that he can. You know, he followed the trend of the Cleveland Suds of having like a bad fastball with a great load of secondary offerings. I think this changeup could be instrumental to really sending him to that next level. I don't think he's quite Bieber Kluber, but I do think he can kind of be in that next level there, maybe like a little bit of a cut below peak Carrasco. So that'd be a heck of a pitcher there. You're talking like a top 30 starter. Now, if I did this in 2019, I probably would have included his slider, but it regressed severely in 2020. Of course, small season. And he actually, if you look at the breakdown of Aaron Sivali's game logs, he was excellent through like the first 7-8 starts, and then it kind of fell apart, and he didn't really have any time to rally because the season ended. I still think it's a big key to the breakout as well. The changeup versus lefties, the slider versus righties, but the changeup was the one pitch I wanted to put on here. The elements are just here for him to be very good. The market understands that too, though. His average draft position is at 187 right now in the National Fantasy Baseball Champion. I'm just going to say NFBC. Sorry, I'm not going to say the whole thing every time. NFBC Draft Champions Leagues. Those are 50 rounds, draft and hold. So they go very deep. Everyone with a pulse gets drafted. And those are the ones that have been going on for since like October, I think. So you get a lot of draft data there. And he's going at 187. So the market's in on Aaron Sivali. I'm not leaning off of him at all. I'm just as interested in him as I was last year. I think the development of his secondaries is going to continue. And I mentioned with Chicago how, you know, maybe Dylan Cease could turn to a Keuchel or a Giolito or a Lance Lynn for some tips. I do know for a fact that in Cleveland, those guys absolutely work together. Now, they've lost some of those guys. You know, Kluber's gone, Bauer's gone, Carrasco's gone. But the guys even that are still there and the coaching that they have, we have a lot of faith in what Cleveland's able to do. So I think we're going to see some development out of Sivali, and I think that changeup could be very instrumental. Next up, let's go out west as I take a drink here and talk about Mr. Tony Disco, Anthony Desclafani, and his changeup as well. Now, he's only thrown it 6% of the time over the last 2 years for a 1.9 p-val. And he's had flashes. I mean, if you've been following Eno Saris's work for any amount of time, he's been on the Anthony Desclafani train for a whole minute. And there's been flashes there that have been like, wow, he's going to turn the corner. He's going to be something. You know, he has sub-4 ERAs in 2016, 2019, but he's a home run machine. And his 2020 was absolutely brutal. But immediately, going from Cincinnati to San Francisco is going to help home runs, like just no matter what. Just going those two ballpark changes there has to help somewhat. He may still give up home runs, but it shouldn't be at the same clip that he had in Cincinnati. He has a career 171-point platoon split, giving him an 839 OPS against lefties. So again, like Cease, what would help there? A changeup. He's never thrown it above 8%, though. And he's had, you know, some decent p-vals with it, including a 2.0 pitch valuation with it in 2019. But that was only on a 5% usage. I wonder why he didn't want to use it more. That's pretty intriguing. He has a 485 changeup OPS, and that's 10th since 2019, minimum 180 thrown. But it's very Sivali-esque in that he has a 3% strikeout rate. That's even worse than Sivali. Sivali's laughing at his 3% strikeout rate. But he also has an insanely low BABIP, a 143. And again, if you're getting rollovers, a lot of weak contact, that a low BABIP can be sustainable, but not a 143. You got to figure out a way to miss some bats with it too, like we see in this pitch here. I mean, that's a great one. Of course, I picked some of their best ones here to highlight. I didn't want to put the one that hangs in the middle and gets sent 450 feet the other way. But I think he has a feel for what he wants to do with it. Does he want to incorporate it more? I know that maybe San Francisco doesn't have quite the reputation of Cleveland as far as developing pitchers, but I trust a lot of what they do. When they get a pitcher, I'm intrigued. I'm interested to see what happens. When they got Kevin Gausman, I was like, okay, let's see what they can do. A lot of it's the park. I understand that. People say, oh, you know, go to San Francisco and it's a pitcher. Let's take a look immediately. But I also think a lot of the coaching things that they do, and of course, working with Posey when he's healthy and going, great catcher, that certainly helps too. So I'm really eager to see what Desclafani can do out there in San Francisco. You know, I mentioned that he has feel for what he wants to do. You can see it in this pitch, and you've seen it throughout bits and pieces of his career. I think that's a big part of it, because a lot of guys, when they're trying to develop a changeup and it's just a show me, you know, 5% pitch, they have no feel. They're changing their grip every outing. They're changing their grip inning to inning with it. They don't know what they want to do. I feel like Desclafani has a little bit of a feel of what he wants to do. And so I feel like this could be the next reclamation project for the Giants here and really turn things around. I think his game plan against lefties should include upping this changeup to at least a 15-20% usage against them. I think he really needs to get higher there while also adding more of the sliders and the curves. Again, it's the trend in baseball, and I mentioned it earlier with regards to Cease, but moving away from your fastball where less is more. We're seeing it league-wide. Very few guys are adding fastballs. Lance Lynn stands out. I mentioned him with regards to the White Sox. He's one guy who says, nah, I'm going to throw it like 97% of the time. Other pitches are for losers, fastballs forever. And it's working for him. So no shade on him for that. But I think Desclafani could definitely benefit from following the trends of leaning into his secondaries more, with the changeup being a big part of it. 913 OPS against lefties since 2019 says you got to do something, because what you're doing right now isn't working. His ADP is at 397. I looked just since this month to kind of get an idea of where he's been very recently. 397. Again, even with a little hype machine kicking in, if some people start to see, oh, maybe Desclafani can do some things, or he has a decent spring, I don't see a chance of him really becoming cost prohibitive. Like, you move up, 30, 40, maybe 50 spots if things really get exciting for Desclafani. I think his time has kind of passed as far as excitement in fantasy, where people are really in on him. So if he's your sleeper, you put a little star by him, you do not have to overpay. And that changeup could really, really help him in becoming the next reclamation for the Giants. And I'm realizing now, as I look at the clock, I should have done more than 4. I tend to be wordy, and I thought maybe 4 would be enough. And then I was like, oh, you know what? Don't do 15, which is what I had listed, because I'll never get to all of them. And I cut it all the way down to 4. And that was very stupid. But we're going to get to the 4th. I do have 4 others, by the way, that we're going to kind of hit on. They don't have as much detail as this, but I'll get into them. And then maybe I'll take questions from you guys on any pitching questions that you have, since we're going to definitely have time, because it's only 8:19. Our next guy, though, is very topical, because he just signed, and it's Taijuan Walker. And we're talking about his curveball now that he's used at a 10% clip since 2019 for just a 0.7 p-val. So that's not over the top. Some of these other p-vals were quite a bit better, but the main reason I included him is because I love Taijuan Walker. I'm a huge Taijuan Walker fan. I still see a lot of potential with him. Injuries have been the real thing to slow him down. Performance has been there in different periods of time throughout his career. He moved from Seattle to Arizona. Injuries really struck. I remember he had like bone spurs in his foot. I remember there was a picture of him on his Instagram. It looked like he had like 10 jacks in his foot. If you know what those are, those little, that stupid game from way back in the day where these little, I don't even know how to describe them. These stupid little things that are on the ground that look like stars. You bounce a ball and pick them up. What a dumb game, by the way. But anyway, that looked like they pulled like 5 or 6 jacks out of his foot. Can you imagine trying to pitch with jacks in your foot? Would not be awesome. Anyway, he just signed with the Mets. I thought it was a great pickup for the Mets here to add to their depth. They had Luke Casey and David Peterson penciled in. I think they work better as, kind of 5-6 guys as opposed to 4-5. Taijuan Walker will now move into that 4 spot. And I think that this curveball could really, really be something that he could go to. It's been kind of a steady 11% usage over his career. It dipped a little bit. That's why it's down at 10 over the last 2 years. I think it should go up. It can be really nasty when he's got it going. It only has a 727 OPS, which is 66th out of 89 who have thrown at least 80. In 20 only. I only looked at 20 because he didn't pitch in 2019. So for him, I had to look just at 2020. But it does have a solid above average 36% strikeout rate. So sometimes it gets hit a little bit, but he does miss bats with it, as we see here, which I believe that's Aaron Hicks flailing. Sorry, Aaron Hicks. I'm a big fan of him. I didn't mean to expose him like this, but he goes flailing at that one. The thing I think about this curveball with regards to Taijuan Walker is that it could be a righty or lefty weapon. I'm showing one here against lefties, but I think he could use it against both sides. And I don't even think he needs to necessarily jump up to like 30-40% usage with it. I think adding 5 to 10 points, moving him in the 15 to 20% range would be something that would definitely help him get back to where he's been. Again, for some of these guys, it's breaking out to a level they haven't been to before. For Taijuan Walker, it's getting back to some levels that we've seen when he was pitching well. He's been around for a long time. If you follow prospects, you've probably had Taijuan Walker on your brain for upwards of a decade now, but he's going into, I believe, his age 28 season. That's why I thought a lot of teams should have been in on him as a free agent. It's hard to find free agent pitchers who've done some things, in their career on the right side of 30 who are going to come pretty cheaply. So I thought good pickup by the Mets there. I was kind of hoping my Tigers might go see what's up with him, although they've got a lot of pitching on the horizon. Anyway, back to this curveball. I think particularly against lefties, they didn't do much against it in 20. They had a 333 OPS and a 67% strikeout rate, which sounds amazing. And then I tell you, it was only 6 plate appearances, and that takes a lot of steam out of those numbers. But clearly here you have a lefty batting switch hitter who strikes out at it. But I really think that could help him against lefties. I think he could increase the curveball usage against them a little bit more, but then also mix it in against righties even more. The inconsistency of his splitter could create an opportunity to take a little bit of the splitter usage and funnel that into the curveball. I love splitters. I know Nick talks about the inconsistency of them if you have to rely on them. And he's right, by the way. It's a feel pitch. And if you don't have that feel, it's really difficult. That's why Kevin Gausman's been so up and down, because he's kind of a 2-pitch guy. And so when he doesn't have the splitter, it's game over for him. That can happen to Walker at times too. But I think this curveball could be instrumental in him kind of leaning less on that splitter. So I'd love to see Taijuan Walker get that curveball going. New York is another team. The Mets, I like what they do with pitching. They've had, Mets gonna Mets because things go wrong whenever it seems like they got things going on the right track. Something happens and injuries have been an issue. But if you look, they've had a lot of great pitching come through there, and a lot of that has been their development. So I think they have something here with Walker that could really work for them. You look at his average draft position this month, it's 324. Again, that will definitely go up because the trend is that when somebody signs, if they're a free agent of any note, and pick 324 is that, that's still somebody who's going in most draft Champions League, pretty much all of them actually, 50 rounds. When they sign, they do go up a little bit just because that certainty is back there that they have a team, even though I don't think anyone was worried that Taijuan Walker wasn't going to play this year. Once that's solidified, there is a bump. So I think the signing with the Mets bump will probably take them into about 300 or the late 200s. And then if there's a hype bump, it could probably get into like the 275 range, which for me is still something I'd very much pay. Like I said at the outset, I love Taijuan Walker. So I'd probably set his minimum pick and pick him at like 240, 250. I don't think that's where his average will be, though. You will not have to pay that price regularly. But I think if you do find yourself in a position where he's available, I think you should consider him, because Taijuan Walker has the arsenal that he can develop a little bit and really get back to being kind of a mid-threes guy. I'd say this year I wouldn't look for more than maybe 140, 150 innings, but that total, even 135 innings, I think is going to be somewhat of a significant total, because everyone's coming down this year after the COVID season that normally would be like 130. That's not so impactful, but innings are already coming down in general. And then you factor in the COVID, $130, $140. That's not too bad for Taijuan Walker, and this curveball could definitely help. So those are the 4 main ones that I wanted to highlight. I did have 4 others that I kind of had as my next 4 that I wanted to talk about. 4 more notable offerings there. Yu Darvish, obviously he's the best pitcher in this entire group here. It doesn't seem fair that he could even add another offering that could really trip up the opposition, because he already has 32 pitches at last check. So I don't even know if there's any usage available. That's the thing with him. He throws so many pitches that how many of them can even be at the 10% mark, but he throws his splitter at a 5% clip over the last 2 years and has a 5.2 p-val, which is insane, by the way. That's really nutty for a 5% pitch. Any potential improvement for him just seems unfair to the rest of the league, but maybe he looks into that. His former teammate, though, Alec Mills, is somebody that I've kind of got my eye on. He's got that Kyle Hendricks comp immediately because of the fastball velocity. But that, I don't know that they're really that similar beyond that. I guess they're kind of control artists too. But I think he's pretty decent. I think his slider could be instrumental in him sustaining some of what we saw this year. He threw the no-hitter. He pitched pretty well for the Cubs. I wonder if there'd be an opportunity for him to really kind of jump up to another level here, where he's not quite on a par with Kyle Hendricks, but definitely doing some big things with that slider. Had a 4.2 p-val over. I don't know how much he pitched in 19. I actually don't remember, but he pitched quite well this year. And 10% usage, bump that up 5-10 points. That could be a big weapon for him. And it could bump up those strikeouts, because that's kind of the thing with Alec Mills right now, is that his strikeout rate isn't particularly appealing. He has a low velo, so there's a margin for error problem. but maybe the slider could be key. Zach Eflin's definitely somebody who's popping up on sleeper lists. He had decent, he's had fits and starts too where he looks good. I remember, was it 2 years ago or 20, was it 19 or 18, where he was having a good season. Things were going really well. I remember having him, I think it was like a 2-start week where he had the Marlins and somebody else. And he ruined the week right away on a Monday or Tuesday where he gave up like 8 or 9 runs against the Marlins. I would say this wasn't, I was going to say, well, this wasn't the playoff Marlins, but even the playoff Marlins last year, their offense was pretty terrible. So regardless of which Marlins outfit it was definitely a bad Marlins team though. And I've kind of hated Zach Eflin since then. Fantasy hated him. I don't have any ill will towards Zach Eflin, but I was so mad about that because it derailed this pitching staff that I had, and I've been upset with him since. But I'm coming back in here, and I think his curveball, which is only at a 7% usage at a 1.3 p-val, I think that could really help him kind of get to a level that he's hinted at but not quite gotten to. And the Phillies need a little bit more starting pitching. I've seen them kind of pop up in an interesting spot in some of the projections that have come out. And I'm kind of curious about it because I don't quite buy it. But if Zach Eflin takes a step forward, he could definitely push them to something more. Because then if you're kind of looking at Nola, Wheeler, Eflin as a dynamic 1-2-3, now you might be talking about something. But if he's not that great and it's really just Nola and Wheeler, then I don't really know where they're at. But Zach Eflin's curveball could certainly help him. And then Josh Limbaugh was somebody I really liked coming over last year, and he showed a few things here and there, but it was a short season. He had a few blow-up outings that kind of tanked his bottom line there. His curveball as well, 9% usage. He's not somebody who's really good. He's going to definitely fit the current trend. He's not trying to throw a lot of fastballs. He went over, I believe it was Korea, where he went over, found some spin, found some secondary stuff, and really did well. Came over here, brought some of those gains, but didn't quite get all of them yet. I'm eager to see what Limbaugh can do over a 6-month period. That curveball at 9% usage, 1.1 p-val, I think there's more to what he could possibly do there as well. And as expected, I now have 32 minutes left. I definitely should have included more, but that's a benefit for you guys because now I can take questions. So if there's any questions, pitching questions in the chat, you know what? Mini fireside, I'm in. Nick, jump back in here. I'm glad to talk with you anytime. But if anybody has any questions on the 8 pitchers that I discussed here, I'll be glad to talk about them. Here I go trying to trim myself down, and I should have stuck with all those extra pitchers that I had. But if there's any questions in the chat about anything pitching related, I am happy to answer that. Or I'll just talk with Nick, which is never a problem. I heard him laugh, but then he disappeared. Nick, come back. I miss you.
There you go. My camera wasn't working. I don't know if you noticed, I added the GIFs as me in that last slide. I put them up in my own little video for you.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I got you.
See, all I had was I had my presentation over here and then my notes here. I didn't see anything else.
So one consistency I saw with a lot of those was you got guys for the most part with really good early schedules.
Oh, perfect.
Okay, so I mean, Alec Mills I've talked about a lot with like Pittsburgh twice.
That's like huge.
I mean, I'm so, like in every draft, just give me Alec Mills on like the 20th round or something like that.
He's so cheap.
I'm sold. Like I don't expect to have him through the year, but I'll get him for the first 2 weeks while I figure out who I might want to, go and get off the waiver wire in my 12-teamer. Maybe I do stick with him. Maybe he's just so good that I just stick with him. We'll see.
Yeah.
Or maybe
you bounce him back and forth between your reserve and maybe he does well enough in that first run there with Mills that you don't want to cut him, but you just want to reserve him. I call those reserve streamers as opposed to standard streamer, which is a guy that you're going to bring on and off your roster because you don't want somebody else to maybe get a chance at him. Maybe that's what you do with Mills, and you see a Cardinals coming up or a Brewers at Milwaukee and you want to lay low on that. I could totally see something like that.
I mean, yeah, you're putting yourself in the position to like make that decision, right? Mm-hmm. Like you're going to want those 2 starts. I mean, watch Alec Mills go out and throw like 4 2/3 of 5 runs against the Pirates and you just
Colin Moran hits 2 homers or something.
Oh man. I mean, unless we see something dramatically different with his repertoire, I'd say I'd do it again that second time. Mm-hmm. But here's the funny thing. I looked up Anthony Descalfani as you were mentioning, like his changeup. I was like, I didn't really think about this. I think it's a split variant.
Okay.
It's kind of gone in and out. I never saw anyone label it as a splitter, so I don't really know. So I was like, let's actually look and see what game he had the most changeups last year. And Desclafani threw 15% of them against the Pirates on the 13th. Like, oh man,
Of all
9 earned
things,
runs in 2 innings. But
I
wait,
get,
wait, wait.
I'm getting
It
blown
was
out.
not the bad pitch though. The bad pitch was the fastball, and he probably threw more changeups because they were hitting the fastball.
There you go.
Okay.
And his fastball has been a home run. Like, honestly, they should consider Desclafani's fastball for the home run derby if they really want to turn up the excitement. I'm just saying.
Hey, maybe the dead and ball, right?
By the way,
Anywhere
I
in
don't know if
Oracle
you.
Park.
That's a great point too. I didn't even mention the dead ball. If you heard me at the outset with regards to pitch info, I did use that in deference to you because we use it in our PVAL game. But is there a reason that you prefer it to the Pitch FX one?
Yeah, I don't. Do we? I mean, we might.
Is it not?
I
I
think we
swear
use it
it's the
for
one
it
we
because
use.
of the leaderboards are easier.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
If it's as simple as that, I just never knew. But I've been kind of
yeah,
looking at it more and more ever since we had
I
our
don't
PVAL
know.
game.
I don't know. I mean, I think the pitch info actually removes sinkers, right? Just has it as FB as
Yes,
fastballs.
everything is fastball
So we
lumped.
might. Are we using pitch FX and then also pitch info? Because we use sinker, right? We have like Aaron Bummer's sinker or something like that.
We just used for our game. We just
We
used
just
pitch
used
info
fastballs past year. Okay, then that's why I just wanted to simplify it as one thing. Then that's why I did pitch info. That's the only
because
reason
pitch
why.
info has four seamer, cutters,
Mhm.
splitters, and sinkers all listed as their
Right.
own fastball variant.
Next year, you know, we'll raise enough money so that we can have Statcast data pitcher lists, and
That'd be great.
we'll just use Statcast instead of those. That's
That'd be
what we'll do
great.
there.
There are
But
some
yeah,
questions in the chat. Do you want to go
yeah,
over
let's go
those?
for it. Let's do it.
All right, first one. This one's just kind of a big one, just a general one. From King Hippo. Which pitcher makes the biggest leap this year?
Oh man, what would you say, Sporer? This is your
You know,
presentation. You go
that's hard to
first.
say. Like, somebody who is ranked, that I have ranked like 120, who goes to, the 40th pitcher. That'd be a pretty
Right.
massive leap.
Yep.
Or is it somebody who I have ranked like 40, but then they pitch as pitcher 9 or something, right? Like,
Sure.
so I'll give one on both. I'll
Yeah,
give
that
one on
sounds
both.
good.
The guy who's ranked 102 currently, who I could see really being somewhere in like the 40s or 50s, is Chad Cool. I'm still very much in on Chad Cool for the Pirates. I really like him. I think he's got an arsenal that can do some things, and I think he could make a big leap. He's coming back off healthier. 2019 he missed due to TJ. He came back this year and pitched only 46 innings, but he wouldn't have thrown that many in a TJ return year anyway.
Sure.
So I think he'll get us. He's 28. He's kind of out of that injury nexus of like babying him. I think the Pirates should give him a $130 plus. And we've seen good strikeout rates from him. We've seen different things here and there. If he keeps the home runs down, and the dead ball may help that, I think we could see like a mid-3s ERA with a decent whip, and Chad Cool could make a big jump. So I like him
man.
as far as the deep guy, and then somebody in like the 50s, 60s range or 40s to 60 range that could pop up in like a top 15 realm. I will say Jose Urquidy.
Yes. Oh man, I've been talking all weekend about it.
I'm obsessed with it. I've been loving that chatter about him. I've heard some of it, and I'm on board with that. I was huge on him coming into the year. He got COVID. He got derailed by that, and the season was kind of wonky. I wouldn't say he's forgotten. I think being on Houston, getting some hype from you, Eno, I think that's certainly helping, but he's still very affordable, and I think he could be somebody. He's got the arsenal to really have a huge season. Like, again, top 15, something like that. That's a huge, huge year, but I really think he could do it. So I like Jose Urquidy.
Yeah, that's a really good pick. I mean, the fact that his stuff was weird last year, we had a sub 30 inning sample, and everyone's like, "Oh, well, this is who he is now." And it's like, what? We haven't even seen 100 innings. That's I would say the one problem.
Yes,
Ina made the point
right.
that he did throw 150, I think, between the minors and majors in 2019.
In 19, yes, it was 140, 144.
Right. So maybe that does entail
playoff.
the Astros pushing him past 150.
And he's 26, right? So he's also one of those guys who's not so super young that they have to super baby him. And they might not have the luxury to do that. Now, if somebody like Forrest Whitley comes through and starts to pan out on his prospect hype, then maybe they get a little bit more depth that way. But I really like Urquidy quite a bit.
Yeah. And it also really helps him that his middle name is Carewood Mark Pryor. And so then, of course, Dusty Baker is going to let him go a little bit longer.
He actually legally changed his middle name to that to get more innings. It was a savvy move, man.
Smart man.
Savvy move.
He's playing 40 chess up here.
What he could have done, though, to really help the team was to
Hmm.
change his middle name just to Mark Pryor, and then let Lance McCullers change his middle name to like Kerry Wood, like
You
split
just
it so
gotta,
they
yeah,
could both. But he
you
took
gotta
both names.
diversify your assets,
Yeah, he
right?
took both names. So good on Urquidy, though. So yeah,
It's
those
a
are
little
the
bit
two that I
selfish.
like that could take a huge
Oh
leap there. Do
man,
you have any names?
I mean, first of all, you say cool, and I want to believe this. The slider has been so good for so long. It's just a question of what the heater's going to do. And last year we saw some lower velocity. It
Mm-hmm.
got down, I think, like 93 or 94. When I remember when I wrote that legendary article, like a moment before he got Tommy John and got blown up.
Such a bummer.
I was so
He
confident.
was on the cusp, and I was right there with. We were Thelma and Louising off the cliff there as he got TJ,
Oh
being
man,
excited about Chad Cool, and then we had to wait an entire year, and then all we got was 46 innings. The velo was down, but if he gets
right.
that velo back, even if he lives in the 94 range, though, I still think that there's something there. He needs to bring those walks back down. It was up to 14% in this 2020
Hmm.
small sample, but he's a career 10%. I can live with that, and if he can shave it down to 7-8%, that could be huge. The strikeouts are not going to jump off the page for Cool, but as you mentioned, the sliders there, the arsenal is there to amplify the strikeouts, and obviously that would be instrumental in sending him sky high. And he's
Right.
moved away from his fastball too. He dropped it from 58% to 44% this year.
Yes. That's what you want to see. I mean, obviously that slider is way better. It is a sinker, and it's been a very hittable sinker.
Yes.
I do wonder if the Pirates changing analytics is he's actually one of the guys we were excited about, not just Keller, Musgrove, and Tyone about this shift in analytics. I do
It,
wonder if it's going to stay only sinker now, and the changeup we've joked about before being one of the most detrimental pitches we've
it
seen.
was like arguably the worst pitch
Yeah,
in 18, wasn't
poor
it? I think
guy.
we
Oh
talked
man,
about that on a pod.
yes, we did.
You mentioned the Pirates shift. I believe they had the biggest drop in fastball usage as a team in their first year without Ray Searage. So Cool felt that. Other guys felt that there.
Musgrove did. Oh
But that
yeah,
slider curveball combo for him could be key. Now, if he just ditches the changeup altogether, then the sinker has to do some work. But if he can also bring a changeup back, which he's had at times in a 10% rate, but it's been bad. So if he can bring a decent iteration of a changeup back, then maybe he's slider curve focused with the fastball and changeup kind of being there as well. So he could be up to 4 pitches. I wonder if I don't know, because we see guys like Zach Britton throw 100-mile-an-hour sinkers that still move. But I wonder if maybe the lesser velo can help Cool get more movement on his sinker.
sure. Maybe some extra command will come with it too.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, I think the hype I've had a long time ago was really seeing 98-mile-per-hour velocity
Yeah.
with a super unhittable slider, and that
Yeah.
right there is just, well, this should work. Hopefully, we do get something in the near future that really makes them blossom, I guess, moving forward. As far as two guys that I'm thinking of here, in my, I know this is going to be like on brand,
That's fine.
but I don't care. I have 84 Caleb Smith, and I feel like I'm high on him there.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same storyline we had this time last year, because last year was completely a lost season for Caleb Smith. I think it was like 55 days between his first start and his second one.
Completely
Because
lost.
he made
I
that first
totally
start
agree
over the
with that.
weekend against the Phillies, walked like 5 guys, wasn't quite there with everything, but the velocity was back, got COVID, then got traded, and wasn't really able to get himself, get a footing in Arizona for the year. Now he has a clear rotation spot in Arizona. If the velocity's still there, we like that slider. We like that changeup. It's just about not allowing home runs. Maybe the Den ball doesn't,
Humidor
allow
in
those home
Arizona.
runs.
Humidor in Arizona too.
I mean, it's a situation where the upside we were thinking about last year is still there, but now all of a sudden he's the cost of free. So
Yeah.
I would say he's a guy that could elevate.
Caleb Smith carrying a 350, or excuse me, 340 ADP right now. And one of my best friends, I don't think you know him, but he outlined that Caleb Smith had an 11 start stretch there that was really excellent. And if you look at those starts, you can really, that's kind of what he can, if he can, carry that over. Again, you don't know the
That
guy.
was before his hip injury. All right,
No, you don't know. No, I'm actually not even
Oh, I don't
memeing
know.
here.
Yeah,
I'm not
I'd
even
love
trying
to
to.
meet this guy. Sounds really smart, ahead of his time.
He's brilliant. He's truly brilliant. I love the guy. And so, yeah, no,
Oh
I
man.
actually, for all the, back and forth that we had on Caleb Smith at that price, man,
Yeah.
I'm in. I'm in at
Right. I
that
mean, I
price
feel
there.
even
Take a shot.
hesitant, but like it's just now. Well, it's free, and I might as well take that shot on it.
Who's your
I've said
high-end
way
guy,
too
or
much.
who's your like top 50-ish guy who could jump to like the top 15?
Right. I've said too much about John Means. I mean, in my
That
heart,
means business, though.
it is John Means. John Means business, of course. Oh, this is tough. Okay. I mean, yeah, I'll say it. I still believe in Joe Musgrove.
Yeah. Oh,
I still
absolutely.
do.
I have
I
not.
mean,
I have not. And by the way, I'll say I wouldn't. Going to San Diego, I'm excited about that. But I would still be fully in on him if even if he stayed with Pittsburgh.
sure.
Even
Yeah.
on that bad team, I would still be fully in, especially
Yeah, we
because
saw
of their
that shift.
analytics changes.
Yeah, and in September, the highest CSW on any pitch was Musgrove's curveball in September this past year. Also had a slider around a 45% CSW, reduced the fastball usage. Actually, Toby, Batflip Crazy, earlier today highlighted the Z contact going down on Musgrove's fastball when he had success in September. Hopefully that does stick around. And now the biggest issue, honestly, to me, is the injury history. He's often had shoulder problems and other things bothering him, and that could prevent him from getting into that rhythm that we want to see inside of San Diego. But he's got an amazing team behind him.
All the
and
tools are there.
all opportunities now to shine with the blueprint for success. So I would love to have Musgrove on many teams, and I would be so sad to see him prosper not on my squad.
And remember, King Hippo's question was the biggest leap, folks. So we're talking about guys that would have to have everything come together. But we did, for our guys to go from the 50 range up to 15, you need every factor. And we did mention guys on Houston and San Diego in that wins piece that, as far as like ranking he might have meant overall pitching, but I was kind of focusing on fantasy as well.
Sure.
And so to have those wins there too puts a little less stress on their ratios to improve, to get them to that top 15 range, because both of them could win double digits, mid-teens easily on those ball clubs. So those are great names. I love both.
I messed up because I'm looking at the comments now and I see Glass Cobra at 9:33. He says, Nick, say someone besides Means or Musgrove.
You literally mentioned both.
So fine. I'm actually going to go with a guy I have ranked at 59 that I do think is tremendously undervalued.
Okay.
And I know it's crazy because of all the injury questions around it, but Shohei Ohtani is a top 15 pitcher if he pitches 150
Absolutely.
innings.
I respect that you put him up there. I had him at 9. I got him parked at 99 right now. I was kind of waiting until pitchers and catchers report things get going. Mm-hmm. But you're absolutely right. Go ahead and talk about it. Like, he's kind of forgotten right now. Look, he's finally cheap.
Slider and changeup, or splitter, I should say, are both like 25% swing strike rate pitches. Those are absurdly good. Then you have a fastball that really underperformed in 2018. Mm-hmm. And when he came back, well, he wasn't really ready to go. He wasn't fully baked, essentially. He needed more time. And nowadays, they're saying he's ready to go 100%. It's going to be a 6-man rotation for the Angels. I'm not saying it's going to happen because if anyone has any sort of injury haze, it's Shohei Ohtani. But we have to acknowledge the skill set here. I have him at 59 because I feel like that's the cliff, especially in 12-teamers, where I'm getting value before it and then question marks after. So I might as well take the biggest question mark in the injury risk of Shohei Ohtani. But man, that fastball in 98 or so, it should be much, much, much better than it was in 2018. And we saw it. We saw that game against the Oakland Athletics, 10 strikeouts in 6 innings. Like, that is,
I remember it vividly,
prime Shohei Ohtani. So,
and you also have to rank him a little higher, like you did, because in a lot of leagues, if he isn't pitching, you can move him into that hitter spot. So you almost have to boost him a little bit, even though it is a pitcher ranking. You have to do that extra little mental math there to be like, okay, well, there's also the backup that if he doesn't pitch because maybe he's just not performing, but doesn't go out with a season-ending injury or something, then he's going to go hit for you, and you just slide him into UT. So I love that call out. I'm still in on Ohtani. He's at a 250 ADP, super affordable for the kind of talent that he has. And yes, I don't think a single person would be surprised if he dropped a top 15 type of season. I got some other questions here. Next up is from Fir Tree Baseball. Casey Mize, what does he have to do to take the next leap in his sophomore campaign? For me, it's really just about kind of getting reps and kind of finding your footing, right? He showed a few flashes here and there in his 28 innings, really like different at bats. He'd string 3-4 plate appearances together. It wasn't a lot to really go off of, but as a Tigers fan, I obviously watched every bit of what he did, and you could see it. You'd see it here and there. You'd see some great splitters. You saw some great fastballs, cutters, and curves. The tools are there. As far as what he needs to do to kind of take a big leap, I think it's about that kind of consistency with his command, and it does come to the splitter command as well, which you've highlighted a million times about how difficult that can be. And that is important to bring up. It really is, though, because it is a pitch. He's kind of on that cusp, because one of the things that you've talked about is if they don't rely on it too much, then you're fine with it. He's kind of on that border of it's an 18% pitch. So it's important to him. It's his third most used behind the fastball and cutter, but it's probably something that if he doesn't have it, he will have a pretty strict ceiling in these early days for Casey Mize. So I think that getting his footing with extra reps and splitter command are going to be the two things I'm looking for out of Casey Mize this year. What about you with the 24-year-old former #1 overall pick for the best team in the universe?
Yeah, of course, the best team in the universe. I actually realized that this is a kind of cool opportunity. Oftentimes, it's just through podcasts we just talk, and I don't have something visual. I can really show you guys why splitters are volatile super quickly. If you're throwing like a slider, for example, you're going to just come straight off of the seams. Every single time you hold a slider, unless you're Noah Syndergaard, who literally gripped a slider differently every time, and it drives me nuts. But essentially, you always throw it the same exact way, same place with the seams, fingers, everything is there. Curveball, same idea. If you do like this, whatever. Two-seamer, fine. Circle changeup, even. It's just the same thing, really. You're throwing a four-seamer with your middle and ring finger instead. But a splitter, you have to take the ball and jam it into your fingers.
It hurts so bad. I do it all the time, just sitting here, like watching Twitch and just chill. And it hurts a lot.
It does, and you have to actually be in the dugout, like in between games. This is what I used to do, is I would hold the ball like this all the time. And if you want to do a fork ball, you go all the way across like that and even have a gap in between. But the thing is, if you try and do this, you don't even have to get far into it. You'll realize that every single time you do it, you're going to get a different grip. Mm-hmm. You're going to have a different place that the ball is touching each finger. And because of that inconsistency, you're going to have volatility. There are going to be certain days that you just aren't going to be able to stuff it in the right way. And you can't just pause. You can't, you get that one chance to stick it in, and then you can't just go, hold on, time. Let me get that grip
my
again.
Splitter grip just wasn't good.
Sometimes they might do that.
Better, don't listen to that.
Twice.
I'm not throwing a splitter right now, but
yeah, right.
Can I get a second here because my splitter grip was just off.
Right.
Quick question on that with regards to we're getting rumors that more humidors are coming through. Would a humidor, the way it changes the consistency of the ball, hurt or help?
That's a really good question. I don't have a good enough answer. I haven't dealt enough with humidors.
Yeah, I've never felt a humidor ball, so that's why I thought maybe you would know.
I don't know. I don't know how it changes the texture of it, honestly.
And that's the thing,
they're having a new ball, and it did the new one before did affect Tanaka's grip.
It did.
The whole thing about the ball is just, it makes me so upset.
But
regardless, that's the whole thing about splitters. With Casey Mize, the thing I liked the most in his debut was his cutter. Or really a slider, but I'm going to call it a cutter. Didn't have as much egregious movement as we think of when we think of cutters. Or sorry,
and
sliders.
Had a little bit more velo than.
Yeah, it was like 88 versus his 91 or so.
We're seeing a lot of these days, right? The classification between a cutter and a slider, it's a hybrid, and that's it's very difficult to kind of determine which it is. What?
It drives us nuts. Like,
yeah, it really is.
About what is a cutter, and he's just like, ah.
And then you'll say something about a pitcher, and then that pitcher will correct you, like, no, I don't throw that. Yeah, I don't throw a slider. I throw a cutter. It's like, oh, whoa. Sorry.
But right. So that's the golden pitch to me from Mize. Like, he was able to do the old Lance McCullers method of starting them above the strikes and coming right back in to get these golden strikes, jamming both lefties and righties inside with it. He was able to get a ton of strikes on both foul and called in that debut, and that's what made me excited. And then the splitter was there, was able to get some whiffs as well, and that's really what made it work. I don't really like his curveball. What I've seen of it, it just seems more hittable than you'd want. It doesn't really miss a ton of bats. But without that cutter really defining the zone and getting those strikes ahead, Mize, I'm not a huge fan, really. I don't really see where the upside comes from. I mean, look, on a given day, splitter, cutter, fastball, all working, I get it. That's going to
That's
be
a
a great
good.
start.
Yeah, that's
I'm
a
not
good
going to
trio there.
personally depend on that, not to mention the massive injury history that I've heard about with
Hmm.
Mize. It makes me stay away. I'm really sorry for your Tigers. You'll get Matt Manning to replace him soon
Hey,
enough. Don't worry.
Manning and Scooble there too. Of
Yeah.
those three, by the way, who are you most interested in fantasy over the next 3 years? Let's say.
Oh man, I don't know enough about Manning, but from what I've heard, I would probably say Manning just because as much as I want Scooble to be a finished product, he isn't now, and I don't know when he will be.
That's fair. I think that's fair. And Manning really started to pass Mize in a lot of prospect rankings last year, which I think surprised folks because Mize, the former number one overall, and Manning was a high pick, but not at the same degree. And I think that really was like jarring to folks. But Manning has it, and I'm really eager to see what he can do this year. Scooble, a pop up guy, the lone lefty of that trio, he could be nasty too. So even if Mize doesn't quite deliver on number one overall, they do have all three of those guys, and as long as they're all legit starters, I think the Tigers do have a bright future. I know it's my favorite team,
Mm.
but I do think that there could be some good things
So
there. Let's.
we've
Did you
got
have anything
another
else
one
there?
here. Yeah, what did the Mets see in Jordan Yamamoto? Oh my God, Jordan Yamamoto. I can say things. Does he provide any dynasty value as an extremely late flyer pick? What do you think, Sporer?
I think what they really saw was depth. One thing I love about their offseason is their insistence on getting depth. They
Yes.
could have easily done, the Cleveland trade and said, "Hey, we had a big offseason. We went and got Lindor and Carrasco. Shut up. Like, don't ask us to do any more." But they did not do that. They did not rest on just doing that. And I love some of these smaller moves that they've done with the Taiwan Walker, even on the offensive side with Jonathan VR, Kevin Pillar. I thought those were good moves. And I thought the Jordan Yamamoto one, while not necessarily registering hugely on the fantasy landscape, I thought that's a smart move because what's hurt them the most in recent years when it's Mets going to Mets? It's been injuries where they just get all these guys hurt all of a sudden, and they didn't have any depth to cover it. Jordan
No.
Yamamoto is somebody who's pitched in the majors. He's had a few flashes of decent work. I mean, 20 was an utter disaster. 11 innings, but just the worst 11 innings that you could possibly come up with. But if you go look at the 79 innings that he had from 2019, there were some things there. Now, I don't think that he really earned that 25% strikeout rate. I would not really lean on that in any real capacity. I think he is probably more of a low 20s strikeout guy, but he's also a kitchen sink guy too. And I wonder if they have some plans to kind of refine his arsenal a little bit, maybe cut one of the pitches, continue to bring that fastball rate down, and kind of see if he can be, maybe he's just like a 4 inning guy too, right? We see the pitcher role changing these days. And if you're a fifth, sixth starter, you're not being told that you have to go 5-6 innings. Yeah, that hurts for the fantasy angle, but who cares? They're trying to win games. So maybe he's a 3 to 4 inning guy. And at that point, I think it could be kind of useful. So I like some of his secondary stuff. I think Yamamoto was a decent depth pickup at age 25. What about you?
So I think the best thing that happened to the Marlins last year was the fact that Yamamoto wasn't very good in 11 innings. And I know that's kind of shocking, but that means that they had to push up Sixto Sanchez a little bit sooner. And you
Yep.
guys know, of course, what he did for Miami, helping push them into the playoffs and even
You're
winning
100% right. That's
in
a
that
great call out.
first series. Yamamoto, to me, I mean, for your dynasty value, I wouldn't touch it personally. The Mets have a lot of depth, and I would say Yamamoto is at the back of it at the
Hmm.
moment. Yes, you're completely right. That was a big problem last year. The fact that the false king, that is Corey Oswalt, just wasn't had to pitch some innings, and that's just not what you want to see
They had
with
nothing.
your Mets team. And now essentially you have Peterson as the 5 with Joey
Luke
Lucchesi
Casey.
as your 6.
Yep.
Yamamoto maybe as a 7. I mean, I could even see a case when Seth Lugo returns from his
That's what I was
injury.
gonna
Maybe
say.
they push him up.
He could be the 6. I still love
Right.
him as a pitcher too. And what if it's a Yamamoto Lugo duo or
That
or
could. I like the
pair
way
Luke
that
Casey with one of
sounds.
them? You like
I
that?
like the same
Yamamoto
way that
Lugo.
PR and Villar are the same. It's kind of weird to me. But yeah, I don't really think that Yamamoto is something to consider for dynasty purposes.
Yeah, I agree.
As you mentioned, kitchen sink. I mean, I think honestly, above a 20% strikeout rate is generous for what he brings to the
That's
table.
fair.
It's a low fastball. It's a low velocity fastball. Slider sometimes gets things, and curveball's kind of there, but it can fall apart very quickly if he doesn't have that depth and variety inside of his arsenal. So. I don't really think you got to consider Yamamoto. I think it's a good call for the Mets. It's a great backup plan that was essentially free for them. But yeah, I don't really want to think about this much in dynasty leagues. I'd rather take much of anything else that could help me this year.
We don't have to like do anything deep on it, but Glass Cobra asked about Julio Teheran with the Tigers. I've been obsessed with Julio Teheran since he was a prospect, so I really love that move. Just as a personal, I've always been in on Teheran. I know his foibles, I know his flaws, but I'm pretty excited about it. And it's some of those small signings that I like. Like I said, I really wanted them to get Taijuan Walker. For me, as far as personal enjoyment, a Teheran signing was kind of a nice consolation prize there.
Yeah, that's. I hope it works. I really hope it does. The only problem I see is that maybe we won't get as much Scooble as we would want, but I hope we
Possibly,
do.
yeah. Well, maybe Urania shows that he's not that great, and
Sure.
they use the young guys in Tehran there. So we'll see. What's this
You're
next
in a
question we got
boatload
here?
of trouble, and who provides the highest fantasy value of the next 3 years? Sporer, is it Bauer or is it Glasnow?
With it being the next 3 years, like unless I can have a crystal ball to know that Glass now develops a third pitch, I got to go Bauer.
Yeah.
And somebody also asked to kind of piggyback on that question, why do I hate Bauer? My boy Colin was asking why I hate Bauer at his ADP because I have him ranked a bit lower. And it's the same thing. And I talked about this a lot last year about how he tweaks a lot. Like he's a big tweaker. Not like that, but he tweaks his pitches. Tinkerer is the word I'm looking for, not tweaker. You're right. And we've seen him. We've seen him tinker himself like out of goodness by just always kind of working. And then this year he has this great season, and I put that in quotes because it's 2 months. Like I can't put a lot of stock into it. That doesn't mean I think he stinks. I think he's going to be solid with the Dodgers. But if you're just looking at those two guys, somebody who does have like 40 pitches, or at least is open to trying 40 different pitches, versus somebody who really just has 2, and I don't know if that third is coming, I got to go Bauer there. And I am intrigued. One thing I'm really looking for is if that spin rate holds, if he continues to use whatever he used this year, because there's no universe where he didn't use something. And I have no problem with that, by the way. I'm not here to chastise. If they're not going to regulate it, do your thing, secure your bag. But I got to go Bauer between those two. I love Glass now. I hope he gets that third pitch. He's so fun to watch when he's on, even when it is just 2 pitches. But he needs that third to really take the next level. Or he could kind of have an Archer trajectory. I know we have a sour thought of Archer because of his recent history, but think about how great he was when he was pitching. And we always kept saying, there's more, but there wasn't. In fact, it started to go the other way. Why wouldn't that be Glass now? Like what is the real difference between them? Big premium fastball velocity and a great breaker. His is a curve versus Archer's slider, and no real third pitch to bank on. At some point, if the curve isn't working, it's hanging more. There's a few more homers, and all of a sudden he starts to hit that downward slide. Plus, he's had injury history too.
Why haven't I thought of that? That's a great call. I mean, it's very interesting to see 2 guys get traded for each other that are comps,
and then they become teammates.
Yeah, right. Unreal.
2 years later.
I would say the one difference is that Glasnow's heater I think is more untouchable.
Much better. A cut better. I agree.
Yeah. I mean, back in the day, Archer was throwing 97 or so at the top of his zone effectively. To be fair. But between Bauer and Glasnow, it is Bauer for me the next 3 years. I'm not a fan just because there's much more unknown about Bauer this year than my top 8. That's why I have Bauer at 9 personally. Hey. I would just rather go with Darvish. I think that's much more of a finished product, and we know what that is at this moment. Same with Giolito and Nola, and I think Scherzer just doesn't get enough love. And
I have him at 9 too. Oh no, I have him at 8. But I'm with you. Yeah. I don't have him there at that 4 spot there. Plus, he beat up that awful what's the word I'm looking for? That awful Central. And I'm just like, I'm not that impressed by that, Right. It's great. And he put up the numbers, and he was, again, I don't think Bauer's going to be bad with the Dodgers, but I'm not paying for him to be this unquestioned top. And I'm with you on Scherzer, by the way. I'm not betting against Scherzer or Kershaw. Like I will take either.
Yeah. Kershaw's at 10. I think you have them about the same spot.
I actually have Kershaw at 6.
Whoa! All right.
I'm in. He's never been bad.
Good.
And
I would love that.
The innings issues that we always have with him are almost mitigated to nothing this year. He's going to miss his few starts, but everyone's innings are coming down. Whereas I think his kind of stay where they always have been. So that brings everybody closer to him.
That's the hardest thing to predict this year is innings. I
Absolutely.
mean, we have no idea exactly about it. I mean, for me, I'm making the guess that Giolito and Nola are going to throw more because they won't have any inhibitions.
I agree with
But
that.
who knows? I mean, it could very much be an even thing. If it is, I would say that the quality of innings should be better from Kershaw versus them. So I very much understand that. But we're out of time. Miles Nelson has already been so generous to push this back an hour. I
I
don't want him to
appreciate
wait
that.
any longer.
Thank you for
Sporer, I'm
all the
happy we got a mini
accommodations.
fireside and you did a presentation.
I appreciate all the accommodations. Sorry I
Oh,
had to bring it on
amazing.
the fireside there. I should have used more of my research there. I was trying to tone myself down because I was worried that if I did like 10 guys, then I wouldn't have enough time for them. So I was like, I'll just do my 4 favorites. And I should have done more. But thank you for coming in. Thank you for all the accommodations yesterday. Thanks to Miles, Scott, everyone moving for me. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you for all the wonderful well wishes for everybody from about Charlotte. And this is amazing. Another amazing event by you guys. You're killing it. I love you, Nick. Thank you so much, man.
I love you too, man. Thanks so much for being a part of PitchCon. It wouldn't be the same without you, you know? So I'm glad you can make it.
Thank
And
you.
we'll talk soon.
All right. Sounds great. Bye, y'all.
All right. So we have the final hour left.